I'm going to do my interview here, I think. Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. Today is the 30th of November, Thursday. Wind is out of the north-northwest. So that can mean only one thing. We're going back to the blind on the ridge. So predictable. I'm more predictable than any of the deer on this farm. No, I don't think that, well, we can talk about it when we get to the blind, but I really don't think that they're on to us. There's something else going on with the dynamics of what's, the behavior of these deer is really strange. I pulled the camera that was in front of that blind, and I'll talk about what was on there once we get up there. We're going to take the four-wheeler this time. Thought about walking, but seems like we did that experiment either earlier this week or last week or whenever that was, and didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. In fact, it was probably a little bit cleaner getting in with the four-wheeler than walking in. Definitely a lot easier going up that bluff. This is, and I've said it a number of times, but this is the middle of what I believe to be the range of these two bucks that I'm hunting, and my trail camera did verify that. Again, we'll talk about it in a little bit. Ethan's got a story to tell. He went on a big adventure this morning, so we'll hear about that in the blind too. So keep watching. I hope we don't disappoint you today. We've got 2 days left, today and tomorrow, and then we're off for 15 or 16 days until the firearm season is over. Then we can bow hunt again. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail, Fuse Accessories, Elevate Tree Stands, B3 Releases and Broadheads, and Hoyt. I want to talk for a couple minutes about how to tell if you've burned out a spot. There's some risk that we've burned this spot out, or at least some question of whether we have. Normally, you can tell when you burn a spot out when the deer stop coming to it. That's the easy indicator. I mean, the first time in usually should be the best. And then if it goes downhill a lot after that, then you know that you're burning it out. You give it a break for several days and you come back and it should be, a little bit better movement there again. That's the normal progression. But on this spot, we've never hunted here and seen more than 2 deer, even at the very beginning of the season, right? Yeah. And we saw those younger bucks, but there was just one. Once in a while you'd see a doe and a buck, or 2 does come through, but we would never see a group of deer come into this plot, not in daylight. So it never was getting a lot of daylight action. So even though we're not seeing a lot of daylight action now, it hasn't dropped off that much because it never was much. So here's why I don't think we burned it out. Like I said, using the normal indicator, you'd say that this has gone bad. Well, it has to be good first in order to go bad. I had the camera set right in front of this blind for 11 days, and it was pointed out into this little opening, the little plot in front of the blind. And I pulled that yesterday, and I had 11 days worth of photos. I'll bet you on one hand you could count the number of photos in daylight, and the rest of them were all at night. A lot of times it was after 10 o'clock, midnight, 1 in the morning. you get a 1 in the morning photo and there'd be 3 or 4 bucks out there, one of which would be one of these 2 bucks I'm after. They're hitting this during the middle of the night. And, again, you could think that's because we pressured it too much, but during that 11 days, I think we only hunted it 3 times, 2 or 3 times. So it's not like we were putting this constant pressure on it. It's just a strange deal. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Normally if you've got a decent number of deer around, a spot like this should just pull them like a magnet. They should be rolling in here every evening. But again, I think it goes back to the slightly low deer density on this farm to begin with, and then you throw all these acorns into the mix, and you just don't have deer that are feeling any stress, and they're not going to corn. Even the other plots, the ones we haven't even hunted, don't have hardly any tracks in them, in the snow. So that's why I don't think we've burned it out. Obviously, it's open to debate, because anytime you're not seeing deer in a certain spot, that's always one of the first things that you think of.
Is there any reason, like another reason that deer would go nocturnal other than pressure? I mean, is there anything, like you said, density-wise that could cause them to be nocturnal or anything like that?
I don't know. I mean, I think that we only sense they're being nocturnal because they're not coming out in the open during daylight. Mm-hmm. The few hunts that I had back in the timber, there was tons of activity. I think that their whole patterns have skewed this year because of the acorns. I don't think they're coming out in the open. I don't think their patterns are moving them toward these places. If the does aren't going to the open areas to feed during the rut, the bucks aren't going there looking for them. So all the activity has been taking place back in the timber. That's my sense, is that it only seems nocturnal because we're hunting out in the open. And if we were hunting deeper, I think we would see more. Of course, you were hunting deeper, and you didn't see a ton either, did you?
Not usually. But, I mean, a lot of that farm is kind of different. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of, close food. There's not a ton of oaks on that farm. So it's,
Doesn't really serve a lot of purpose other than to run cattle.
Yeah, and it's a rut farm. I mean, that's what I found is, bucks will cruise through there between the October 25th and November 15th, and then before that, it's really low productivity. And at the end, it's not very good either, so.
Yeah. So that's my discussion on whether or not you've burned out a spot. Usually you can tell just by the amount of activity, but on this one, I'm not sure that's a good enough indicator just because of the way the deer have been this year and the fact that they never were active here in daylight. So it's weird. We're going to come back in a little bit, and Ethan's going to tell us a little bit about his morning's hunt. He had some fun back on a piece of public land, and that'll give us something to look forward to deeper into the episode. Okay, so I got a nap. Ethan got some Knott's pretzels. We're ready to go again. Tell us about your morning hunt. I mentioned that it was on public land. It was one of the spots that Carson had going into the season, right?
Yep. There's actually been a pretty nice buck that's been showing up there, so we kind of had a last-ditch effort and decided about 8:30 last night that we were gonna wake up at 3:30 this morning, drive all the way there, and then do a hanging hunt in the dark and just basically do or die and hopefully lay eyes on that buck. But we didn't see him. It was actually a good sit though. We saw, I want to say either 6 or 7 deer, which is more deer than what I usually see, so that was refreshing. And it was actually pretty fun to go all the way back in there. We hiked probably close to a mile. It was like a 35-minute walk. So we loaded the frame packs up, had our bags, stands, clothes, cameras, camera arms. I mean, I've never carried more to a stand. It looked like we were going in there for days, but we were only in there for 3 or 4 hours.
Did you get set up before legal shooting time, or was it after?
No, it was before, and the deer started moving right away, and I didn't know what to expect. I've never hunted this late in the season in the mornings, but I would say almost all the deer movement was right off the bat.
So how do you pick a spot in the dark?
Carson had been in there, and there was a bunch of scrapes. There was actually a scrape line, so like the full moon helped with the snow, so
yeah.
we were able to like use the silhouette to figure out, the tree straight enough and the tree that had like actual shooting lanes. So the one we picked actually worked really well. It was surrounded by cedars, so we had some good cover on our backside.
Huh. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's too bad, because you can't go tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
It's too bad you didn't start hunting there earlier in the season.
I know. And we talked about it.
Yeah.
We were like,
Well, I was even going to go for a while after Carson killed that buck. I thought, because the deer that he had on that scrape was a dandy.
yeah,
That big 9?
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was there 2 mornings ago, right at daylight.
Wow.
So he's in there. Obviously, the gun season opens up on Saturday.
Day after tomorrow.
So, it was like, whatever, what do we got to lose? There's a 70 or 80 acre cornfield in there, standing corn, so that's where all the deer came, and they were just following through,
Wow.
going back to bed. It was a really good spot. Like, you look at it on a map and you're like, that's the spot. It was.
Well, maybe next year.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if the corn is still there, you can try it late season, but it'll get pounded during the gun season.
Yeah. We talked to a few different guys in the parking lot, and they were like, oh, we're just scouting for gun season, so. It was good we got in there when we did, but
Yeah.
just no mature bucks, unfortunately.
That's cool. Neat hunt.
Yeah.
We're down to half an hour to go. And I am very surprised that we haven't seen anything as good as these conditions are. I still think we're going to. Perfect wind. It's blowing right square in the front window of the blind. And out the back, we're clear behind. We haven't had to keep the windows closed like we did in that bottom because there's no problem with swirling up here and the wind is the perfect direction. It's cooling off. Temperatures are dropping fast now that the sun is going down. I still say we're going to see something, so be ready. We're not by any means writing this one off just yet, but in case that we don't, might as well sign off now, as long as we got some decent camera light. Whatever we see from here on out, we're going to tag onto this video. If it's one of the bucks that we're after, I'm going to come back in again. Otherwise, we'll just roll right on out. Appreciate you joining us. See you back here again tomorrow for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream, Ethan, big. Bigger antler. Go to your right. I think there's another one. Go up. Maybe it's to your left then where the other one is. Yeah. I think that's another one right there, isn't it? Small buck. Yeah.